2 cent. Today was a run day, and apparently I'm the fastest man on the planet. I've been using my phone and my GPS to record my runs for going on 2 years now, and yeah, the last couple of days, the last couple of runs that I've done, um, yeah, I've been doing like 2 minute runs, 4 minute, 2 minute 1 miles, 4 minute 1 miles, 3.5 minute 1 miles, 6 minute 1 miles. I've been averaging pretty quick runs. So I think it's what's interesting to me is um, the way that we. This is kind of the reason why I even started Run Day when it comes to being a scientist and dealing with empirical data. That was the whole point, so that I could do the science, and this is kind of like the actual science part of the whole thing that I'm doing. I think it's interesting that when I started Run Day and I would do like a 18-minute 2 mile or 23-minute 2 mile or 15-minute 2 mile or 19-minute 2 mile, people were like, yeah, that seems pretty good. That's not that slow. That's pretty fast for your age and what you're trying to do, right? But then as soon as I started feeling like I'm running faster and having all of the experience as if I'm running faster and getting these ridiculously fast times, when I say, yeah, it's weird how I did a 2 minute, 2.5 minute 2 mile, the first response is there's no way. It's not physically possible for you to do a 2.5 minute 2 mile. Nothing about the way that I've been doing this or anything has changed. Now this is for walk. This is not for run. This is gonna be for walk. So wait, is it already showing what's going on? Let me see. No, see? So here's data. 0 miles, 0 steps, 0 calories. Okay. So now let's go back. Let's do it again. Right? Let's do it again. This is set up for walk. This is not a run. The reason why I'm using the walk is because I feel like it should collect data more accurately. Because here's the funny part. The tools that I've been using to measure distance and run and the consistency at which I've been doing it has not really changed that much. So the data should be accurate. There should always be some level of error. There should always be some level of discrepancy. But the tools themselves should be acceptable units of measurement. If I run every 3 days, and I've been doing it for almost 2 years, on top of running for six years regularly in the military, I'm very proficient at running. I've been running for a very long time. I don't really want to get into a debate on trying to validate my 2 minute time or trying to say that I am the fastest man on the planet. I want to talk about how science works and how humans receive information, process that information, and draw conclusions from that information. Because it's fascinating to me with all of the, like I said, my 2 cents about like racism and discrimination and prejudice. It's fascinating to me how easily we accept things that proves or validates or invalidates the quality of somebody, right? Things that make you small or shows that you're not good enough, you're not competent, you're not capable. We're very quick to be like, that feels like that information is accurate. You being slow, stupid, dumb, retarded, any negative association that I can assign to you, that feels very accurate. If you did a 30-minute 2 mile, Paul, I can believe that wholeheartedly without questioning it. And with everything that I am, I'm pretty confident that you are very slow and you ran a 30-minute 2 mile, right? I don't understand how I can do Run Day for almost a year and a half, record myself running every 3 days with the goal of improving, and get a 2 minute 35-second runtime, and people were like, that doesn't seem right. I feel like that's a data error, or maybe you did something different that's making the information not correct. Because to me, and the reason why I define myself as a scientist, that has always been my conflict in life. I do things based on empirical data and fundamental forces of nature and understanding the way the world actually works. And I get better results from trying to achieve an objective because I am in compliance with nature and natural order. Whereas everybody else is looking at me like, why isn't he doing it the easy way? Why does he have to do it the hard way? That's not going to make, there's easier ways to do it. Why is he so stupid? How come he doesn't understand that the way he's doing that thing is hard and he doesn't have to do it that way? It doesn't have to be done that way. If you have a standard operation procedure, an SOP at work, and they're like, your boss is like, hey, I need you to do this thing this way based on the standard operation procedure. The standard operation procedure is put in position in place to standardize the operation to maximize what is required of you while while increasing your safety by reducing the possibility of you injuring yourself or hurting yourself in the process. So that's what the standard operation procedure is about. It's not about you being fast or efficient or being sweet at what you're doing. It's about maximizing throughput while potentially lowering the probability of injury to the person that is working. Standard operation procedure, right? So in that, there are things that seem fundamentally flawed or fundamentally stupid or fundamentally just, I don't understand why I have to do this. The moment in life that you walk up to something and you say, I don't understand why I have to do this, you need to shut the fuck up and try to take the time out to get from, I don't understand why I should do this, to, oh, I understand why I have to do this now. Not, I don't understand why I have to do this, so you're stupid, so let me explain to you why you're dumb and why I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, because I'm more comfortable doing it the way I want to do it because I understand what I want to do. That's not how we function as functional adults in society. And it's fascinating to me that every day, through trials and tribulations, being proactive and successful and putting in work and coming back out of work, that we don't ever get there. What, in regards to what? My thoughts on slavery are a lot. So, in what context are you asking? In regards to what? Are you asking in regards to chattel slavery or indentured servitude, or are you asking in the context of what happened in America, which was crimes against humanity? The history of what happened to African Americans in America was not slavery. It was crimes against humanity. It was very much. I'm going to answer your question the way I think it should be answered for me, since you're asking me. I personally think that there's a very convoluted line of axioms, postulates, and theorems that I get to what I'm going to say. There's a lot of proofs that I could give to back up what I'm going to say. But what I think the actual history of the African and the way the African was treated in America was truly about, it was Europeans using science to prove God doesn't exist. That's my theory. I think Christians wanted to prove that God did not exist and that there is no God, and that the idea of God was something that was a social construct. It was not something that was applicable to the natural forces of nature. And they spent 300 years engaged in behavior that should have made the second coming of Christ a reality, and it never occurred. They passed away. I know my grandmother, and I know of my father's side, but but beyond that, I don't know my ancestors beyond just my living grandmother, my living grandfather, and my living great grandmother. That's about it. But again, that's my theory. My theory about that whole condition is that's my basic theory about the whole aspect of the idea of crimes against humanity in America. Because the problem with you're okay. I've say this a lot. I'm gonna say it again since the question was asked. Slavery First of all, I think slavery was a term for worker in the past. Slaves were people that did labor. It didn't mean forced free labor, it just meant labor. So in the past, they used to say slave. In the present, we say work, right? We are workers. If I go to work, I get paid. If I go to work and I don't get paid, I am an unpaid worker, right? So in the past, you were a paid slave or you were an unpaid slave. You were an apprentice or you were not an apprentice, right? That term was a catch-all term for people that did labor. My great grandfather's occupation, I don't know. My great grandfather, he was unemployed. I guess Walter Emerson, from what I understand, was unemployed. My father's grandfather died when my father was young. He was a service member in the Navy. My grandmother on my father's side was she was a deacon or a pastor in a church. And my grandmother on my mother's side, she was a lunch lady at our elementary school. So, so again, that's what slaves means to me. It means worker. It means you get up and you go to work. We have modern time. We have temp agencies. Temporary agencies are able to have people that work for them, and they send those people out to assignments, and you get the job through the temp agency, and then the temp agency gets a percentage of your income based on the work that you're performing. They're not doing anything. Just because they recommended you and sent you there, they get a check because they recommended you and sent you there. So that's the way, that's kind of the foundation of how slavery occurred, right? Because I need workers and I don't want to go find some good people to work for me. So I'll go to somebody that knows people that want to work, and I'll ask them for references on people that can work. And he'll say, hey, I know this guy that needs a job, and he'll send them to me. Or you have one individual that has a large pool of people that he knows that wants to work, and he says, I'll send these people over to work for you if you pay me for the information about them. And then Europeans, you have another person that actually owns people that he sends to work. Or the company has people come to them looking for work, and they say, hey, I want to work. And the company's like, okay, you can work. We'll pay you up front, and you can work off your debt. You can work off, we'll give you some service, we'll provide some service to you, and then you can work your debt off. That's indentured servitude. Indentured servitude is like, hey, I don't have a place to live, but I'm also looking for work. Okay, you can live in my farm. You can live in a farmhouse with me, but you have to get up every day and help me with the crops. And since I'm letting you live with me for free, and I'm not charging you anything, once a certain amount of time passes with you being here living with me for free, then I will start actually giving you money to compensate from you actually working and being here and present, right? That's indentured servitude. The next level above that was part of the agricultural industry, which was chattel property. Chattel property was basically the idea that the same way that you can own animals, you can own humans. In the same way that you own cows, chickens, ducks, cows, lambs, sheep, fish, bees, any other animal. That's pretty much how they would apply it to. That's how they would apply that agriculture to. That's how they will apply that value to actual human beings. So, I think that's basically the gist of it. Did I skip anything? Oh, how that differed from what occurred in America. Every culture had the idea of slaves and the idea of slavery, the idea of people that worked, and the idea of people that worked for free. But you were always a person. You were always a legal citizen in a legal entity that was able to function at the highest quality of life like anyone else in your nation. And you could get representation, and you could get legal representation, and you could be recognized, and you can have your humane rights recognized and defended, right? If you went to a farm back in the past and they had horses and the horses were being beat. The horses couldn't go to the police and tell the police that they're being beat and ask to file for assault and then have their owners arrested for assaulting them, right? So that's the same kind of element that applied when it came to what was happening in the past here in this country. That's the part that most people either try to ignore because it's too uncomfortable or try to downplay because they're like, well, it happened to everyone. But it didn't happen to everyone. Everyone didn't have their history and identities and their culture stripped of them. Everyone didn't live understanding that if they had children, that their children were not going to be their children were going to be property, and that their children could be stripped from them and sold off and taken places. Everybody didn't live in a community where if an African slave escaped in America and tried to like go be free, there was nowhere that they could go because you're African. Your skin complexion you're automatically, they look at you and say, yeah, I don't know why that slave is walking down the street without his master. So I don't know my great-grandfather's occupation. My great-grandfather, I don't know his occupation. All I know is that he was not working. He didn't work. From what I was told, he didn't work. My great-grandfather, like my grandmother's, like my grandmother who was a pastor, my grandfather, my grandfather, who was my mother's father, was just unemployed. He was a pastor and he was unemployed. So this tree should be 1 mile. So once I come around this corner right here, this should be 1 mile. It's a 14-minute walk. So I need to know how far I need to run to get to 2 miles. So I know that's the 1 mile mark once I get to that corner. So yeah, that's about the gist of it. Oh, everywhere around the world that people went, they would find every culture and every nation had a system within it of slavery. And when it came to America, Europe sent indentured servants over here of every ethnicity, and everybody was allowed to equally work and equally be free and equally work off the land and equally be free off the land. But something changed in colonial America where they decided that Africans would be the slaves and Europeans would be the slave masters. And so that's pretty much what happened. They decided something culturally occurred where they decided that they wasn't going to respect the rights and the privileges of an African, and that an African was going to be a class of permanent chattel property, permanent animal level property with no rights and no privileges, like any other farm animal. They would have no rights, no privileges, no representation. They would not be educated. They would not be allowed to own anything or have property. They would only exist as property. And that lasted up until the Civil War. After the Revolutionary War, when the United States, the 13 colonies, separated from the U.S., the 13 colonies separated from the U.S., and when they separated from the U.S., they formed the United States, and they did that under the Declaration of Independence. And then right after separating from the U.S., with the Declaration of Independence already established, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Even with all of that written down, they still chose to continue to have Africans enslaved as permanent slaves and permanent chattel property. And it was only after the Civil War between the North and the South that the United States united into one nation and slavery was abolished. And then after that, we went into racial prejudice and racial segregation. Because there was always a belief for some wealthy white people, those that have money and power and authority, there was always some belief that the institution of underpaid and free labor, because that's what it is, underpaid and free labor, would always come back, and there would always be a way for them to maximize their profit margins without having to give any money to anyone for no reason other than to just have a lot of money. So, that's what we're living in right now today. That's my answer to that question. So, yeah. Any other questions? All I'm doing is trying to get to 2 miles so I can know exactly where 2 miles is located. It will probably be right back at that same tree. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep walking. You know what? I could park right there. I could park there. I could put the camera in my car. Yeah, I can actually borrow my car. I can actually run my car. Just wonder if they would be okay with it. Yeah, that would be perfect actually. That would solve everything. I don't know if my camera in my car could run for 6 hours continuously. It'd be worth it. I'd have to get a little change. Full tank of gas. That would work. And I could go live together so that um, the live feed from my phone would go out. The one I'm carrying, the live feed from that I'm carrying would go out. And that one would go out. I don't want to pause it. It'll have to just break. There's no way for me to I have to learn not to so now the tree is 1.46, which means I still got half a mile to go. What I'm basically doing for anyone that cares is that in the event that the GPS doesn't work, I can still track the run using the camera feed for the live feed. And what's interesting is the run that I did is under 10 minutes. And if I get to my destination that's on the video, then I will know concisely what the actual distance is. I will have a very accurate distance. And it's actually more than a mile. So I ran more than 1 mile in less than 10 minutes based on the data. So yeah, I'll have to figure out the actual information. Because I went around twice. By this time, my numbers were ridiculous. So I was like, this data is not going to be accurate. This data feels corrupt. So let me just do what I feel like would be a full 2 mile. And then I came back to where I'm approaching now. And this will give me a more accurate description of how far I actually ran. And so then I can use that information to determine my actual time, what my actual times were based on the actual run. So right about 1.54. So I got to about right about here is where I stopped. So this is 1.56 miles. 1.56 miles. So how far would I have to continue to go to get to 2 miles? So right there on the second run is 1.57 miles. So I still need to go about half a mile. Let's see where half a mile is from here. Can't answer at the moment. I'm recording. I apologize. I'll call you back once I'm done recording. I love you.
Duration 35 minutes 29. Duration 35 minutes 29 seconds. 3,632 steps. Heart rate 95.
Perfect. Hopefully, I was able to get that.